The rain fell relentlessly, its cold drops soaking the earth and everything upon it. The narrow road stretched on endlessly, flanked by dense woods that swayed under the weight of the storm. A lone traveler moved through the downpour, their hood pulled tightly over their head, shielding them from the elements as best as they could. Their boots splashed in shallow puddles, the sound sharp in the stillness of the night. Curiosity, or perhaps something deeper, drew them toward the sound. Their feet carried them off the road and into the woods. The rain softened under the cover of the trees, but the darkness deepened. Each step felt heavier, as though the forest resisted their presence. The humming grew louder, more distinct, yet still carried an air of sorrow. It was beautiful, but it didn't feel right. That's when they heard it, a sound barely audible over the rain. It was soft, almost melodic, yet unplaceable. They stopped and strained to listen, heart beating a little faster. The sound grew clearer, resolving into a gentle humming. It was faint, carried by the wind, but it was undeniably there. The melody was haunting, the kind of tune that lingered in the back of the mind like a half-remembered dream. The forest was eerily quiet aside from the melody. No rustling leaves, no nocturnal animals, just The traveler paused, their breath hitching. The silence pressed in on them, amplifying the sound of their heartbeat in their ears. Then, a faint rustling came from the shadows. They turned sharply toward the noise, but nothing was there. The forest around them was empty, yet the feeling of being watched was undeniable. A low laugh broke the quiet, the sound reverberating through the trees. It wasn't close, but it wasn't far either. It was guttural and unnatural, sending chills down their spine. The traveler took a step back, their instincts screaming at them to leave, but the path they had come from seemed to vanish. The trees were denser now, their branches weaving together to form an impenetrable wall. The whispers started then, soft and indistinct, but growing louder with each passing moment. They seemed to come from the trees themselves, an overlapping chorus of voices speaking in a language that didn't belong to this world. The traveler turned in circles, searching desperately for a way out, but the forest only seemed to tighten its grip. Panic set in. They broke into a run, their footsteps loud against the wet ground. Branches tore at their clothes and scratched their face as they pushed forward, the whispers following close behind. The forest seemed alive, its shadows shifting and stretching, always just out of reach. After what felt like an eternity, a soft glow appeared in the distance. It was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the cold, oppressive darkness of the forest. Desperation overpowered fear, and the traveler stumbled toward the light. As they drew closer, they saw it was coming from a small, weathered cabin. Its wooden walls were gray with age, and its roof sagged under the weight of years. The door was slightly ajar, swaying gently as if beckoning them inside. The traveler hesitated on the threshold, peering into the dimly lit interior. A single lantern hung from the ceiling, casting flickering shadows on the walls. The cabin was almost empty, containing only a wooden chair and a small table covered in dust. Stepping inside, the traveler felt an eerie stillness, as though the cabin existed outside of time. The door slammed shut behind them with a force that shook the building. They spun around, heart racing, but the door wouldn't budge. The lantern's flame flickered, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to stretch toward them. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent than before. But now they were inside, coming from the very walls of the cabin. The traveler backed into the center of the room, their eyes darting to every corner. The shadows shifted unnaturally, twisting into shapes that defied logic. Faces appeared in the dark corners, brief flashes of gaunt, hollow-eyed figures that vanished the moment they were noticed. The traveler's breathing grew ragged as the room seemed to close in around them. The whispers became a cacophony, a relentless storm of voices that filled their mind. They clutched their head trying to block out the noise, but it was everywhere. Then, amid the chaos, one voice rose above the rest. "You shouldn't have come," it said, low and resonant, the words cutting through the din like a knife. The travelers' knees buckled, and they fell to the floor. The air grew colder, the warmth of the lantern fading as its light dimmed. The walls of the cabin seemed to ripple, their wooden planks warping and shifting. A shadow darker than any they had seen before emerged from the far corner, its form amorphous and writhing. It moved toward them, slow and deliberate, filling the room with an overwhelming sense of dread. The traveler tried to scream, but no sound escaped their lips. The shadow loomed over them, its presence suffocating. The last thing they saw was its featureless form enveloping them, its darkness swallowing the world. When the storm finally passed and the sun rose, the road was empty once more. The woods stood silent, as they always had, and the cabin was gone, leaving no trace it had ever been there. Only the faintest echo of a haunting melody lingered in the air, a reminder of the traveler who had stepped into the shadows and never returned.